Mm-hmm. Hello lovely people, in this video we're gonna finally fire all of this up, but before we do that we need to test a few little things. If you watched my previous video, you saw how I did all of this. Now, all of the wires are kinda connected. Before I make final connections, we need to test a few things. So this video is going to be more about how to troubleshoot and what you need to check and test before you connect and fire up all of your super expensive equipment. You're always coming when I'm the busiest. Yes, I'm gonna feed you in a second. So all the connections are made. You can see all the power wires are run. I have the DSP plug over there. If you haven't watched my previous video, it was quite long, but in that video I explained all the connections, how everything was made and the purpose why. Just a very quick recap. This power supply, the lithium battery, is completely separate from the front. That's why we will need a few relays. 2 relays are over there and 1 relay here. We're going to test them. We're going to make sure that they're working correctly. Now, one little thing that I had to change is that blue little wire, that remote wire. I was running it from the head unit. However, head unit remote wire has a stable voltage and it doesn't work for me because I need that to represent the voltage that's coming from the alternator. So I rerun that wire instead of the head unit. I ran it from one of the fuses in the fuse box, and now when the alternator kicks in, voltage goes up to 14 volts. I have 14 volts on the remote wire instead of 10, 11, 12 that's coming from the head unit. One tip that I always have for everyone, no matter how confident you are, double, triple and quadruple check all your wiring, because it takes only one wire to screw everything up and burn something. All the power wires are being run and you can barely see anything. I left those and those exposed because we will need to check them, and I want to show you how everything works. So first checks that I always do, no matter if I'm connecting only 1 amplifier, 2 or 5 amplifiers, no matter if it's in a home or in a car, I am double checking my wiring using a simple cheap multimeter, and we're going to be using a continuity mode that, there we go, the beepy thingy. So if I will take 2 probes from this multimeter, if I'm going to touch them, it's going to beep. So we will be looking for that beep. Okay, let's start. First, I'm going to check all the grounds. So I do have the negative connected to the ground of the lithium. If I'm going to touch here, we do have a beep. So now the alpine ground, you can see here, GND, beep, correct? The US amps ground is this one. We do have a beep. If we're gonna go here, the recall ground is this one. We have a beep. And the DSP ground is gonna be this one, the second, the black wire. We do have a beep. Perfect. And the last one, DC-DC charger ground, is which one? That's the plus, you can see, and the minus is on that one. Perfect. We have everything good. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna connect this one to the positive. Now I know that this, the small wire, is gonna go over there, so I'm checking for the positive. Beep, perfect, working. I'm gonna explain this really a bit later. Now we're gonna check this positive is gonna go to the US amps, is gonna be this one. Perfect. And this positive is gonna go to the red wire, this one. Works perfectly. Now we're gonna check the remote. So I'm gonna connect this one to the Alpine's remote because it's closest to me. There we go. Now, US amps remote. We do have a beep. Cool. Recall remote. we have a beep, cool. And this gonna go here, remote out, beep. Perfect. So now we know that our positive, our negatives, and our remotes are connected good and everything working. Now I'm gonna show you this one. What we have here is the plug for the Helix DSP, and this is the relay. I left all the wires exposed on purpose so that I could show you everything is going to be hidden somewhere. So what is happening here, I have, probably going to be very difficult to see. For the Helix DSP, the first one is the positive in, second is the negative, the third one is the remote in that's coming from outside, and the last one is the remote out that's going into the amps. So what I need to do is I need to feed this remote in, the third wire, through a relay. So this relay, the positive is going into this pin, and this pin as well is piggybacked into the positive that goes into the plus of the DSP. The other side of this connection that now is closed is going into the remote input into the DSP. And what triggers it is this wire that's going to the remote that's coming from the car and the ground that is connected there. So basically when the remote has 12 volts, this relay makes a connection and bridges the positive that is going in and the one that's going into the remote in. We're gonna test that as well. This remote is going here and it goes into the other two relays that I mentioned. One is the voltage relay and the other one is the timer relay. So again, remote from that car goes in here and it goes out here. That goes into the DC-DC charger and basically turns it on. And the second one is the one that cuts the amperage in half, 20 amps instead of 40 amps. So we can test the remote and see how it works. If I'm gonna turn on the ignition on the car, just like that, the car is on. Now we have, there we go. We have 11.8, 11.7 volts, and this output is not triggered because the voltage is too low. This one is working as well, but this one is on a 10 minutes timer. That one over there, if I would be able to show you somehow, this one now has 12 volts on the remote in because this relay is engaged. When I'm gonna turn on the engine, so you can see, I'm gonna show you 11.6 and this light is off. That means this relay is not engaged. If I'm gonna turn on the engine very quickly, there we go. You can see here we have 11, 12, 14 volts. There we go. And now when we have 14 volts, this relay is engaged and the DC-DC charger will be working when I'm gonna connect it because I disconnected the main power wire. So basically now with this, everything in theory should be working. So first of all, let's check if the DC-DC charger is working. In order to do that, first I need to turn on the fuse, which is here, on. And then I have a second breaker, which is that one. If I'm gonna turn this on, this I heard clicked. We can have a look from this side. Yes, we see we have a green light, which is perfect. That means that this DC-DC charger is working. If I'm gonna turn off the car, but leave the ignition on, see 12.7, and the DC-DC charger is off. When the voltage goes above 12.8, 12.9, then the DC-DC charger turns on. So perfect, this is working. Now what we need to do, what? I just fed you. Are you still hungry? I just want some attention. Maybe you want some attention, yosh, yosh. Okay, so now what we need to do, we can connect the lithium to the rest of the system. Before we do that, we need to kinda go gentle about it because we don't want that massive spark, because I don't know which amps are charged and which are not charged at all. In order to do that, I have an LED bulb, and I'm just gonna very gently connect one of the wires, let's say negative, to this one. And then the positive, I can connect to each individual amplifiers very shortly and see if we have any light or not. So if I'm gonna connect to this one, nothing happened. Charged this one, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And nothing happened. That means that all of these amplifiers are charged. Now what I'm gonna do is connect the fuses, because now we know that all connections are fine. We know that everything is charged and we're not gonna get a spark. So let me do that very quick. Okay, so I do have a few fuses. I will be using a 20 amp fuse for the recoil and the DSP, 20 amp for this big massive Alpine because it's not drawing anything. I'm gonna go for 60 amps for the US amps, and at the moment, because I couldn't find a bigger one, I'm gonna use a 100 for this monoblock, but later on I'm gonna find a 200 amp fuse for it. Okay, 20 amps for the recoil and the DSP, 20 amps for the big Alpine, 60 for the big boy US amps, and let me just very quickly check in my fuse box. Do I have a 200 one? That's 100, 100, no 200, so 100 amps will do for now. If the fuse is gonna blow, it's gonna blow. Then we're gonna know how much we are sucking out of the lithium. This is for a 3K monoblock, so yeah, probably it's gonna blow, but it's gonna be fun. Okay, cool, fuses are in. Now let's do this big boy fuse. Just to loosen it up. No spark, as expected, because everything is fully charged. There we go. Perfect. So this is a 300 amp fuse, just for the whole fuse block, basically for everything. And now we just need to plug in the DSP plug, which again, everything should be fine with it. This is very tight, and doing everything one hand is even tighter than that. Oh, so these, yeah, I need to wrap them in tape. Everything wrapped. Let's plug in this DSP plug. Okay, let's plug in just like that. Let's shove that one in. Let's leave this for now. I would like to connect this DSP plug because it will show me if the remote is working. Man, it's so tight, especially when you're filming and trying to do at the same time. There we go. In. Now, let's turn on the ignition and hope for the best, because I can still make an error, but hopefully not. Ignition on. I could hear the relay click. Okay, something is working. Yes, blue light here. The US amps. Okay, green light on the US amps is working. This one, yep, lights are on. Recoil is on. And the DSP light is from the other side. So yes, everything is working perfectly. Where's the DSP light? There we go. Green light. So everything is working perfectly. Let's have a look at this one. 11.6. The DSP now shut off the remote output because it has a sleep mode that goes to sleep after a bit. Is the controller working? Just very quickly. Yes, the controller is working. So yes, everything is working perfectly. Basically, the whole idea of this is to make sure that you be safe and not blow anything. In order to do that, double and triple check everything. Now I just need to tidy up the wiring and run a few wires, because the only wires that are not run are for this amplifier. For the US amps, you can see those that go under the amplifier and they come out on that side. So let me run those wires. Let me tidy up a bit everything. I need to hide those, put all the panels back, and we're going to continue, and we're going to see if we have actual music. Okay, just very quickly, I want to show you how it charges, because now we went for a drive for like half an hour or so. So we have 11 amps, so the battery is still charging, it's not fully charged. This is the voltage and amperage that's coming from the front into the DC-DC charger. So you see 11 amps and 14.3 volts, and we see in the middle power 160 watts. If I'm gonna go now to what's going to the lithium, this one, let me connect this. We have 10 amps and 14.06 because it will charge up till 14.4, and we have 140 watts. So 140, 160, let me do the math. Based on the math, is 87% efficient. So it is efficient. It's properly. Now, the only thing I'll need to check the temperature, because this is a little bit warm because it was working. The monoblock is stone cold, as expected. Let me lift this just to check, because this is on idle. This is warmish, this is cold, cold, warmish. Let me grab the thermal camera. Okay, so this is on idle. We have, it's just the battery that was charging, 32 degrees, 35. Inside, the fans are blowing. This sits 28, that one 27, so cold that the Alpine runs a bit hotter compared to the US amps. The ambient temperature is about 18, so 10 degrees lower than the amps. Surprisingly, the DSP is close to 30. Warm-ish. Why is it warm? Maybe it just runs warm, because I didn't check before. This was idling as well, 25. Yeah, so far so good. I will do exactly the same, not sure if in this video or in the next video. Is this wire warm? 24, 28, positive. This one is a little bit warm. 30. We'll try to do the same after beating on it, playing on it, just to see how it does. One thing that I wanted to comment straight away before I forgot. So previously, if you remember, I had only the US amps and they were running those Fatal Pros. Now, I kept it kind of quiet because I wasn't sure what's the problem. The problem was that those Fatals in the upper mid-range, they were sounding harsh, and I was not sure why exactly, because I started to doubt a little bit, can these drivers that objectively measuring very, very well, can they sound harsh? And today it was a revelation. So I connected the Alpine and absolutely all the harshness went away. This is very similar situation that I had with the Down4 Sound, the Easy A10, the 10 channel amplifier, where I said that the high frequencies are kind of a mess. With this one, it's not a mess, it sounds nice, however, it adds harshness in the very, very upper range. With this amplifier, I had to do a scoop out at about 3K, like minus 3 dB, just for it to sound kind of normal and acceptable. With this, I cranked it up full tilt with no EQ, flat. It sounds butter smooth, bloody amazing. Now, this, I think, I made a correlation between objective measurements and subjective perception of how an amplifier sounds. So to me, from now on, I mentioned this previously as well, 18 plus 20K spectrum and harmonics will define how an amplifier sounds at a higher frequencies. The US amps, same like Down4 Sound, it has a lot of distortion and a lot of harmonics at those higher frequencies. You can check out the measurements of this in the distortion factory. However, this Alpine, as well as my other V12s that I used previously, they have extremely low distortion at the lower frequencies. I don't remember the actual numbers. I think the US amps has, I think it was 0.1%, whereas this one kept it all the way down to 0.0 something stupid. So yes, amps do sound a little bit different, and if we're talking specifically about higher frequency performance, the lower the distortion at higher frequencies, that is IMD, intermodulation distortion, with multiple tones playing, the better the amplifier performs. Now this butter smooth with no tuning, with no EQ. So now the next step is just do a very quick tune because I want to enjoy it while I'm going to work. Okay, so we're gonna start as always with the mid-range drivers. However, don't be scared of all of this. This is a new REW beta software, which I will be doing a full tutorial on. So this is just for you like a sneak peek. However, I was using it for quite a bit now, and I really like it. We're gonna talk about this, but now it's just about the tuning. Left and right mids, you saw this before. It's exactly the same like previously. Nothing really changed. The only thing I changed is the crossover frequency, and obviously the levels are a bit different. So now I cross them at 120 hertz, 24 dB link with Triley, because previously I crossed them at 100 and they can handle it, but they are moving quite a lot. I just increased it up to 120. Left side after EQ is just very simple. Removed all of that. I didn't boost the top. I just removed all of this. For the right side is exactly the same, before and after, just removing the peaks and just a little boost here at about 3K. Everything else is kind of exactly the same. And then, like both of them, left, right, they're summing after time alignment. They're summing very nice. So I used a UMIC 2 for the RTA, and I used the AMI Helix audio measurement interface for the time alignment, and that bloody thing is so awesome. I will show you it sometime in the future, but it's so simple to use, very small, very tiny, very convenient, much easier than the Focusrite. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, watch the review that I did about that interface. So this it's basically exactly the same as we had before. The only difference is that now, okay, so this is just in a different level, front, there we go. So the only difference is that now I cannot really match them to the target below like 115 because they do fall off a bit faster. When I crossed them at 100, I had a bit more here, but now it's just they don't match. And this is a sacrifice because I still don't have any mid bass. I have to cross them into the front subwoofer, and they just don't play as low. However, later when I'm gonna have kicks, or at the moment probably I'm gonna use doors, I will be able to cross them at 200 or so, and they will follow that target ideally. Now the front subwoofer I'm gonna show you is the same kind as we had before. The only difference is a different target. So the front subwoofer target is like this, where previously it was together with a rear sub. It was going like this all the way. So previously when I had only the front subwoofer, I had to have like a rising response throughout the range. But now with crossovers, just chop off top and bottom. I think I used 24 hertz Liquid Riley 24 dB high pass to remove all of this, and I don't remember, 160 to 100 on the top end. I did, however, removed these two peaks with EQ before I applied the crossover, because I wanted this region, because this is a cone breakup from that Stereo Integrity BM11. So I removed this first. Maybe it's not necessary, but just to be safe. And then I applied the crossover. And after this, just very little EQ. Bam, everything matches perfectly. This little buzz, something is buzzing in the cabin. I do believe, I'm not sure, but I think it's the fan in the US amp, because that is the only thing that I can hear something from the back. I will need to investigate this. And the rear subwoofer, which is the most important thing. So 2 of them. Now this is a response. I'm just going to shift it to the side for you to show. You can see it does play down to 10, but this is a lower level and it kind of drops off below 17, and this is the built-in infrasonic filter that we have in that ESX amplifier. Again, it's not a big deal because down to 20 we do have this rising edge. This is my subwoofer target, and ideally it should go a little bit higher like that, but you can see down to 20, down to 17, 18, it will be fine, but then it just loses like 4 dB or so. So I applied crossover, and again, first with EQ, I applied a single band at 120 minus 15 dB just to remove this peak. Again, this is probably cone breakup, and only then I applied the crossover. And after EQ, the EQ removed only this bit, and I applied a shelf filter at 20 hertz plus 6 dB just to gain that very, very bottom end. And you would think 6 dB plus would be quite a lot. However, the only thing that this shelf filter does, it kind of negates the high pass infrasonic filter that is applied in the amplifier. So really it doesn't add any extra energy or distortion. It's just like as if there would be no infrasonic filter. So that's the only thing. If you look at this is the difference in the noise, because when I did the crossover, I applied the crossover in REW, and this is not measured but generated measurement. So it's not actually measured. That's why you have, see, everything is going down. So just ignore that. However, after EQ, we have this, and we have our target, which matches perfectly. So we have our front subwoofer, we have both mids, and we have our rear subwoofer, and our overall target like that. And after summing, after time alignment is done, let me just remove everything, we have something like this. And again, this is my target, which matches very, very nice. If I would apply some smoothing, like 1/3, just to show, you can see this from about 200 hertz or so, like here, plus minus 1 dB, which again, you could adjusted, but I just left it because I just didn't want to play too much with it. Again, this was for like 15-20 minutes job to do everything, but the mid-ranges play very, very nicely. And as I mentioned, you can see here at 2-3K it's totally flat. There's no scoop out, no nothing, and they do play much miles nicer than they did with the US amps. It will need a little scoop out because now I am able to crank it up quite a lot because the front subwoofer doesn't work as hard, and those two IB subs have quite a lot of output, so I can crank it up. And when you crank it up, you need that scoop out. Even if it's not harsh, you would still need it to be able to listen for a bit longer periods. And the other thing that I did, I left the channel gains for the subwoofer and for the front subwoofer at 0, because in this tune, with the fronts as they are, I had to tune down the rear subwoofer's IB by 7 dB. And this one, the front subwoofer, I think minus 2 dB. And considering that the gains on all amplifiers are at 0, if you would increase them up to clipping, that level would be much higher, and I will be playing with that. So when I put all the levels at 0, basically increase the level even more. So this is my super bassy tune. If we have a reference at 45, so at 30 hertz, the super bassy is 10, 20, 26 dB plus, which is very, very bassy. And again, as I mentioned, in the Insignia, to have plus 20 dB is kind of okay, just because that car was loud. But now with the Skoda, after the sound treatment and everything, especially when I done the front, even this tune, which has 10, 15, 18 dB plus, listening to normal music, it is very bassy. Probably like 15 to 13 dB plus would be optimal, just because the car is quiet. The quieter the car, the less bass you need, And obviously, if you have no deadening, if the engine is very loud, you will need much more. But basically, this is my final tune. These squiggles wiggles are totally fine, it's not an issue. The Fatal Pros in the dash, they play up to 20k. Obviously it's dropping off because the pink noise finishes at 20k. The IB subs play down to 10 hertz, peaking at 16 as before. And yeah, it sounds very, very nice. So for the time being, I'm gonna keep this tune, I'm gonna listen to it, and bit by bit, we're gonna add more. We're gonna add the mid bass in the doors for the time being, then we're gonna install the tweeters, then we're gonna do the kicks, and yeah, the build log will continue, and I will be working on this car bit by bit. But for now, at least I have something to listen to, and to be honest, like, it is very, very nice. The only thing I will need to do is just a scoop out. If we can very quickly have a look, what I will need to do is for you as well. So I'm just gonna go to EQ filters. We're gonna choose one PK band at 3K, probably Q of 1, and we're gonna remove like minus 3 dB. Probably too much, so we're gonna go Q2 and minus 2 dB, something like that. So you can see, if I'm gonna remove this one, this we would get something like this, which would have a scoop out color that you cannot really see. Let's do red. There we go. So with this little scoop out between like 1.5 and 4K, it will sound much, much nicer. So I just need to add it to the DSP. Because now I can crank it up, and I do crank it up, because if you can, why not? That's it for now. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.